Hi, this is Evan, and I'm your host for Wine Couch TV. This week's segment, where we'll taste two wines as we always do, is going to take us back into the supermarket for another episode of Market Fresh. As we approach summer, and this will vary depending on where you are in the country because produce cascades in at different times, I think of, and probably you think of too, one of my favorite things, and that's corn. Now, corn is ubiquitous. It's around during the year. Unfortunately, from a human standpoint, there's only a couple of months that it's good. Most of it, as we probably know, goes to livestock and increasingly goes into ethanol. But for human consumption, it's really all about summer, and summer is when we rock. Now, before we actually talk about the wine pairings and what I look for in matching wine with corn, I thought we'd talk a little bit about what you should look for in corn when you go to your supermarket. Now, first off, this has already been dehusked. Now, when I go to the stores, as you probably do too, it's best to find stuff that has husks on it. When you get the husks, you should look at them. They should be green and they should still be moist. If they're too dry, it means the corn's been sitting around in the store. The next thing you should do is peel the husk down and take a look at the kernels. The smaller the kernel, the sweeter the corn. The larger the kernel, the starchier the corn. The next thing I do is actually, if you can, you have to do this while the produce guy isn't looking, is actually pop one of the kernels. And you should see, number one, moisture, but there should almost be sort of like a slightly gray, milky-looking liquid that comes out of that corn kernel, and that will also ensure sweetness and freshness. Once you're there, you know your corn is really, really good. Let me put it down. So, when you get it home, what can you do? First and foremost, when you buy corn, one of two things. Either one, freeze it immediately because it does freeze, or number two, cook it immediately because the longer it sits in the refrigerator, the more that sugar turns into starch and the less sweet the corn is. From a wine standpoint, there are a couple of ways I think about it, and a lot of it has to do with how I'm cooking. One of the things I like to do with corn is actually grill it. I'm barbecuing pretty much all summer, and after you throw it husk into the water for about 20 or 30 minutes, you can then throw it right on the grill and grill the corn itself. Grilled corn will pick up not only a nuttiness, but a slightly smoky or roasted character that you get in the corn itself. And when I think of that, I think of Chardonnay. Now, Chardonnay for me is a perfect accompaniment for corn, and particularly the ones that have a little bit of oak on them. This particular one we're tasting today is one of my favorites and great value wines, and it's from Columbia-Crest, and it's their Grand Estates Series. It's the 2006 Columbia Valley Chardonnay. It's a fabulous wine, and it's a great everyday price point, which means it's not going to break the bank, and you can buy lots of corn. Right off the bat, I get that sort of echoing of that sort of nutty, slightly sweet character that you're getting from the oak, which is obviously going to be echoed in the corn itself. But it is that sort of nutty, smoky character that you get from oak, which will resonate very well with grilled corn. Let's go ahead and taste this one. It has a nice, rich texture. It's very mouth-filling, and as we know, corn, particularly if you slather it with butter like I do afterwards, it's going to have a nice, rich mouth-coating character. And that butter, which we add on, will also be reflected in, of course, the buttery nature of most Chardonnays. The wine has long length. It has a slightly nutty finish, which again is perfect for this particular grilled corn. Now, if you didn't want to grill the corn and you still wanted to have it with Chardonnay, what else could you do? Well, I oftentimes will scrape the corn kernels directly off the cob and toss it in polenta or grits, and I find that that's a wonderful way to, again, echo Chardonnay. The third thing you can do is actually just make a slight batter and take that corn and throw it in the deep fryer with the batter and make fritters. And again, that slightly nutty character and the deep-fried character will work beautifully with that wine. Now, what if you don't want a Chardonnay? Well, if that's the case, I zip over to my other favorite, which is Viognier. Now, this particular one happens to come from Rosenblum Cellars, and it's part of their Appellation Series, and it's the 2006 vintage of Cathy's Cuvee Viognier. Now, Viognier, as we probably know, is a very lifted, aromatic, perfumed wine that actually goes beautifully with corn. Let's taste it first and then talk about the food pairings. The nose is explosive, full of peach and nectarine, ripe fruit, white floral character, and a lot of just sort of very elevated aromatics. The palate of this wine is very, very reflective of nose, which is to say it sort of explodes with a tropical fruit character, perhaps a little bit more melon and almost pineapple, but again, a very strong peachy, nectarine type fruit flavor. When I look for with this, and it has that same rich, round, waxy character that the Chardonnay has texturally. What I look for in this is to echo that tropical character. So one of the things I like to do is pick up on things that have a note of sweetness. So if you take that corn, for example, and slice it off and make almost like a salsa or something out of it and add in perhaps a little bit of mango and serve that alongside a piece of chicken or a piece of grilled fish or even a slightly fried fish, that would be a wonderful thing to do. One of my other favorite things is to actually make a corn pudding, if you will, sort of a custard base, and throw the corn kernels into it and serve it alongside, again, chicken or fish or any sort of lighter white meat, and have that as a nice accompaniment during the summer. And that, of course, is a wonderful echo on the Chardonnay and picks up on the sweetness. So corn has a lot of really, really cool stuff that you can do with it, and it works beautifully with wine. And of course, during the summer, you'll probably be eating about as much corn as I do. Now, before we leave today, the Wine Couch word of the week. And the Wine Couch word of the week this week is skin contact. Now, no, this is not racy nor X-rated, but skin contact actually has to do with the concentration or the actual contact of the wine juice with the skins itself. It's something that we do normally for red wines because all of the character, flavor, tannin, and color for red wines is in the skin and not so much for white wines. If you actually crush red grapes, the juice that flows out is white. So it's the skin contact that actually enables the wine to ultimately pick up red color, red wine flavor. In white wines, we might do it a little bit for certain aromatic varieties, like that Viognier that we just had, to sort of pop and lift the fruit. Anyway, that's it. We are out of time for the day, so now I'm sure you're going to rush off to your supermarket or farmer's market and buy a little corn, maybe grab a bottle of Viognier while you're out there. Anyway, until next time, you take care.